Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the SUMERNET Ethics Training Session. This is an exciting morning because for many of you, or I should say for some of you, ethics has been an issue that's new to SUMERNET, and as such we're all on a really steep learning curve about what it means, how the principles that are available are enacted across our projects, and how this really affects our day-to-day operations of our SUMERNET program. Now, today we have the pleasure of having Mr. Michael and Dr. Sudarat to really engage with us and talk us through the principles of SUMERNET ethics and also some of the process that many of you have gone through with your ethics forms and applications. As always, these events and training sessions are so much better when you've got an opportunity to use your voice, to write questions, to turn on your camera and to engage really fully with the content that's being provided. And as such, we look forward to that. Of course, when you're not speaking, please turn off your microphone and listen carefully as things will be coming up, such as polls or different types of engaging activities. My name is Dr. Leonie Pearson and I am the SUMERNET Research Coordinator and I'm here to answer any of the questions that you might have. But at this stage, I would like to throw over to Mr. Michael and Dr. Sudarat so they can talk us through ethics. So in that light, enjoy the next hour and a half and I look forward to hearing and learning more. Thank you. Mr. Michael.
Thank you, Leonie, and good morning, everybody. My name is Michael. I am the SUMERNET Ethics Advisor. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'd like to also introduce my co-facilitator, who will be very familiar to you, Dr. Sudarat, who I know is happy for us to call her Jan. Sudarat introduced a lot of the important issues around ethics during the conflict sensitivity training a couple of weeks back, and I'm very happy that she will be able to help me guide the discussion today and share some important insights on the ethics review process so far. This is the first year in which SUMERNET has been running an ethics process. So as Leonie said, it's a steep learning curve for us, and today is an opportunity to go over some of the key points and more importantly, have a discussion, hear from you how you've engaged with the process so far, and also how you'll engage with the process in the coming months and years within SUMERNET. So we can start sharing the presentation now, please, Agus. So, as Leonie said, the session will be around an hour and a half, with a quick break somewhere in the middle, if we're keeping on time. So, really, as I've mentioned, the objectives today are to introduce SUMERNET's ethics approach, our principles and processes. I'm hoping that many of you will have some familiarity with this already. We've published an ethics guidance document. We've also launched some training materials, videos, blogs, and so on the SUMERNET website. But in case it's been a little time since you looked at that, or in case you've not seen that before, we'll go over that first. And then we'll give you an opportunity to reflect, ask questions, and share insights across teams. Do we have the slides? Great. Hope everybody can see that. Okay, so we can, yeah. There might be a slight delay, right? I don't think that the participants can see the PowerPoint just yet. Can you see? Okay, great. Okay, sorry for the slight technical delay here, but I think we're ready with the PowerPoint. So let's look at the agenda for the day. We're just deciding who's going to take control. Very ethical discussion happening here to make sure everyone has the opportunity. So Two main parts really today. The first part will be to go over the approach to ethics. This is detailed in the guidance document around our ethics principles. And then we'll have a discussion after that. And then the second part will be on the SUMERNET's ethics review process itself. So that pertains to the ethics review form, the evaluation process done by the Secretariat and feedback, and also which grantees and which teams will be a part of that process. And then there'll be more time for a discussion on issues and questions you may have. But before we do that, I know all of you are very seasoned SUMERNET trainees at this point, but we're going to start with a quick poll using our favorite software, Vivox. I think you're all probably more familiar with it than I am, but I'm trusting Agus and Nguyen to set that up for us. So if all the participants can access Vivox now, if you move to the next slide, it should show how to join. So I'm probably a new face to many of you, and that means that you are also new to me, and I'd love to know where you're all joining us from today. We probably don't have time for individual introductions, but if you can go to the app, enter the ID, or go to the website and let us know where you are today and where you're joining us from. The link to the poll is also being put in the chat. So we should be looking at the first question. The slide is showing the second question right now. Can you go back a slide, please, Nguyen? Great. Okay. So this is the first time we've attempted to seamlessly integrate Vivox into PowerPoint so that we can see the result in real time. It might not be working right now. Just give it a minute or two for people to get the poll open and respond to questions, and also welcome to new participants that are coming in the last couple of minutes. You just missed the introductions. My name's Michael, and Ajahn Jan is co-facilitating the ethics session today. We're starting with a few introduction questions here. I'd like to know where everyone's joining from today. In a moment, we will hopefully have the results of the poll. Can we see the poll? Could you all just give us a moment here to make sure we can show you the slides? As Leonie said at the beginning, we really want to hear from you all today, and I know from the conflict sensitivity training session that Ajahn Jan is very astute at calling upon people. I've also got the list of participants in front of me today as well, so be prepared. If you're quiet, you might get a name call out. So it's just going to take us a few seconds to be able to show you the results of our first question. Okay, I think we have some progress here. Okay, great. So if there's still time for those that haven't got to the poll, please access via the link. So unfortunately, there's no one joining us from Cambodia yet. Hopefully there might be some representatives a bit later on. I think this is only based on 5 responses, right? So this might not be representative of everyone on the meeting, but maybe we can move to the next question. So the next question, when it shows up, will be asking you all at what stage your project is at. And this is pretty important from an ethics point of view, because we really want teams to be engaged in the ethics process from the beginning. It's an important part of a project inception process to have an established ethics review and discussion before, for example, entering the field, interviewing participants, collecting data. So the second question is, what stage is your SUMERNET project at? You've got 4 options. It hasn't started yet. You're in the planning stage. You've already started collecting data and other activities, or it's already nearly wrapped up. So I can see a bit more activity on this question, which is good. So it looks like the majority are either not up and running yet, or very new projects, or even in the planning stage. That tells me that this ethics discussion is very timely for you. And even if you've already started data collection, I think it's worth having a discussion about how you've engaged in the ethics process so far. So let's move to the next question. So this is to give us an understanding of how much you know about the SUMERNET ethics process. Now, it's very important that this is an anonymous poll, so you can be very honest about your current understanding of the SUMERNET ethics process. It might be terrible, it might be basic, it might be good, or it might be perfect. I'd be more surprised if there was perfects than terribles. I would probably be ticking good. Maybe Leonie's our perfect, or maybe it's one of the teams that have already done the ethics review process. So I think this is what we expected, a mix of a basic understanding or some good understanding, but there's always more to learn. Certainly, we don't have all the answers in the secretariat and in the advisory team, but let's work through some of these issues together. Okay. I think we can end the poll now and return to the slides. So what I want to do is give an overview of how ethics is framed within SUMERNET, have a short presentation on that, and then a discussion with you all. Great. Maybe it's best if I take control of the slides and then make it smooth. Okay, great. So what is SUMERNET's approach to ethics? Based on the poll, I think some of you will have some answers to this already, but let's give ourselves a quick reminder. So what are ethics and why are they important? Very generally speaking, from a conceptual point of view, the ethics are really our norms of conduct, distinguishing between right, wrong, behaviors and practices. I think it's also important to acknowledge really from the beginning here that ethical norms will also be dependent on culture, background, nationality, and so on. And I think we will all be looking at some of these from different experiences and different perspectives. And they'll be interpreted and applied in different ways. But I think it's important that we all have a common basis around ethical principles within which to conduct work across SUMERNET. And then ethics in terms of research is a method, procedure, or perspective for conducting research, whether it's secondary data analysis, primary data collection, qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. There's a number of reasons why ethics are important. I think these will be known to many of you, having conducted research for many years already. And most importantly, it promotes the fundamental aim of research. In the pursuit of knowledge, we want to avoid error. We want to represent truthfully people's experiences and what the data tells us. Secondly, ethical norms and standards help promote important values, particularly when it comes to collaborative work. We know that a lot of the projects within SUMERNET have collaboration, multi-stakeholder engagement at their heart, and I think principles such as trust, mutual respect, and fairness are very important to those processes. And then specifically on research, something like a peer review process, deciding authorship, those are some sort of specific examples of how these values come to fruition. And then finally, these principles also help hold us accountable as researchers. We're accountable to our informants, our participants, to the wider public, to ensure that we don't have, for example, conflicts of interest, to ensure that the data we report represents the people who that data belongs to. And that in turn is helping us build relationships with policymakers, boundary partners, and the public at large. But really, I'd like to know beyond that what research ethics means to all of you. As I've mentioned, this is going to be a cultural, maybe even a personal thing based on your experience as well. So that time has come where I'm going to call upon our wonderful participants. Would anyone like to share how you would interpret, how you understand what research ethics means? You can either raise your hand or you can unmute your microphone and share a quick reflection on what research ethics means to you. Any volunteers before I pick someone from the participant list? Maybe Ajahn, you might be a good person to start with here. Do you have any reflections for us on what research ethics means to you in your work in Thailand and in the region?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael, for the questions. Well, research ethics means that you conduct the trust and credible research. Like for me, it's about the research method and data collection that you collect and the trust that participant pays in you. It's about you and then about your protection to the participant also. Yeah, this is my definition of research ethics. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. And if you've captured the training videos already, we recognize that language is an important part of interpreting research ethics. And you could have a very interesting discussion about how the term is translated into each of the major languages within the Mekong. So would anyone else like to share what research ethics means to you, either the English term or how the term translates into your language? I wonder if Ko Ang Tun would like to share any thoughts. Ang Tun U, are you there? Would you like to answer this question? And how about Lam Noi? Would you would you have any quick reflections for us on research ethics?
Yeah, I'm not here. The
Thank you.
research ethic for me is that's the approach for conducting the good quality of the research, it including to the approach for data collection, especially for stakeholder engagement in the research. The second is we would like we make the simple side and also conduct with methodology for all after conducting the research ethic approach, make sure that we have a good quality of research for all data collection, good finding, and also systematic of the research methodology ค่ะ This is my definition ค่ะ
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. So we'll have lots more opportunity to discuss what it means to each of us, but I'd like to first share where ethics comes into our work. We've already maybe touched upon how it's part of the research process, but it actually is important to a much wider set of activities within the projects. We've identified 7 major areas where ethics is important as a consideration in terms of projects and activities within SUMERNET. First of all, it's about determining what we want to work on and what we maybe don't want to work on. Of course, this is partly determined by the SUMERNET Secretariat and the steering committee in the focus of the calls, and it's also about how applicants and grantees respond to these calls. Second of all, it's deciding who to work with or who not to work with, and also the ways in which we will collaborate with different stakeholders. And then, as we've mentioned, it's very important to how we collect, use, and analyze data, whether qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. And then, of course, it's also important in the ways in which we engage with boundary partners, whether they're part of the project, whether they are not a project partner, but perhaps identified as a boundary partner. It's important that we build those relationships in ethical ways. It's also important in terms of how we build capacity across the network, how we share and collaborate across teams, how the steering committee, how the secretariat and the grantees work together in different formats, for example, through these training sessions and hopefully in the future when we can gather in person. And then once we've gathered our research and written up our findings, ethics is an important consideration in our outputs, in our publications, how we communicate and disseminate our findings, whether it's through journal articles, blogs, podcasts, videos. There's a real wide range of media that we can draw upon within SUMERNET, but each of those has different ethical considerations. And finally, how are we ensuring that the projects that we engage in persist and have some longevity and sustainability beyond the time frame of the project, be it for the participants or for the intended beneficiaries. We have to think about ethics in that sense as well. So as I mentioned, ethics has been a fairly new process within SUMERNET, and some of the early work we did with the grantees, with the steering committee and the secretariat was to define 6 common ethical principles. So our 6 principles are integrity, respect, responsibility, competence, social equity, and ethical balance. Now, a number of these also overlap with other important consideration areas within SUMERNET, whether it's conflict sensitivity, gender and social equity. But we feel that these are important principles for all of us within the network to embody, to work on, and to discuss together. So let's go into a little bit more detail into what we mean by each of those. First of all, integrity. I think this is an important starting point for any activity or any work that's happening within the network. We want to strive to achieve consistency in our activities, in what we intend to produce, what we intend to influence, following high standards, being honest, showing commitment to values of justice and fairness. And there are a number of ways in which we want you to discuss integrity within your teams, and in the guideline, we've developed some questions we want teams to consider. They're on the screen there. I'm not going to read through all the questions, but please take note of those, and let's see in the discussion as well. So the next principle is that of respect. I think we all probably have a good understanding of what it means to show respect and have mutual respect with colleagues. In the research sense, it's really about how we respect and engage with participants, with partners, treating people as you would like to be treated, of course, and also seeking to understand their perspectives, trying to reduce or to the best as possible eliminate bias or judgments, and being open to understanding what participants have experienced and what they want to share with us. We have a hand raised in the participants. Long Chao, would you like to make a comment at this point? Long Chao, your hand is raised, so you're welcome to comment. If it's a mistake, then we can proceed. You are on mute in case you're talking. Otherwise we'll continue. Okay, thank you. So another important part of the respect dimension is respecting all human rights. I think we've heard a lot about human rights in other sessions as well, but that's obviously an important factor of all of our engagements and activities. The third principle is that of responsibility. The responsibility of all of us as researchers and participants in activities within SUMERNET. I think it's important that individual contributions are acknowledged, both to your expected and observed outcomes, because perhaps what you intended to achieve does not necessarily happen in reality, and it's important to acknowledge the difference between those and be responsible in acknowledging shortcomings or successes and failures as well. And our responsibility to our colleagues within the teams, participants, and wider society. A number of questions to consider in relation to this. An important aspect of this is ensuring no harm is caused, and this was raised very well by Ajahn Jan in the conflict sensitivity, the idea of doing no harm and also trying to, in fact, have some benefit and some positive outcomes for those that are engaged in the research. And there are a number of specific steps we can take here. I think informed consent is one important part of that, having anonymous data, and also how we handle and store data is part of responsibility within research. Fourth, we come to competence. I think it's important that we set clear expectations within teams, roles and responsibilities, acknowledging what our expertise are, where maybe we don't have strong expertise, and that work should be able to come in and help fill knowledge gaps, answer questions, and improve the outcomes of research in ethical ways. The fifth principle is that of social equity. This is very closely tied with what we heard in the gender and social equity training and in their material as well. But in terms of research ethics, it's about ensuring that different people, different communities, different groups are represented within research processes. Maybe that's not always possible, but when it's not, it's important to acknowledge who is being left out and what some of the reasons for that would be. And then also when it comes to communicating findings and research back to participants, ensuring that that information is accessible and understandable to different groups, whether it be around language, culture, education level, and so on. And then the final principle is that of ensuring ethical balance. So I mentioned at the beginning that how we all interpret ethics is going to be different from person to person and team to team. It's important that we strike a balance and have a good understanding of not only our own ethics principles, but those of our colleagues and those of our partners as well. So that was a quick run through of the principles. Hopefully that's more of a refresher for you to have what's in the ethics guide and what's in the other material. Before we have an open question and answer on the principles, I just wanted to highlight the roles and responsibilities that different people have within SUMERNET. It's not just the grantees, it's not just the project leaders who obviously have responsibility for the project. It's also the responsibility of everyone in the network, the steering committee and the secretariat, to guide these ethics processes for the project leaders and project teams, to ensure that you have access to the right information, to the network, and ensuring that we're all improving and enhancing our ethical practice as we go. Because ultimately, we're all responsible. If SUMERNET as a wider network is going to be representing ethical practice, we all have an individual responsibility for that. And then I just wanted to highlight, outside of the SUMERNET material, that within each country in the Mekong, there are national procedures, national policies, which I think it's important that teams are aware of when you're conducting research in each of the countries. These is just the list and the links. Please check these out in the guidance note and go away and do your own research to find out how ethics is framed and how ethics is dealt with formally and informally in each country. So at this point, I'd like to pause my presentation and give a chance for hearing from you any questions or reflections on these ethical principles. Just a reminder that after we do this, we will get more into detail on the process itself within SUMERNET, so the form, the review process. So if you have questions on that, we can take them in the second part. But for now, I'd like to know if anyone has any reflections or questions on what I've just presented there on the ethics principles. So once again, the participant list is in front of me. If you don't want to speak on the microphone, you can leave your comment or question in the chat. I'm going to give you all a quick minute or two to gather your thoughts, and I'm going to ask Ajahn Jan again to offer us some insight from your perspective on these principles in SUMERNET and how you see them developing over the past year or so. Ajahn Jan, please. Thank you. I think you may still be on mute, Ajahn Jan.
Yes. Could you go to my slide, please? Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Michael, Dr. Leonie, and Mr. August for the opportunity, and SUMERNET Secretariat for the opportunity for me to reflect on the ethics research process. So the purpose of the ethical research process is to build your capacity, to learn about the ethical process, and then to ensure that you do no harm to the research participants. In the past, like since July 2020, Dr. Leonie and I has reviewed about 80% of the SUMERNET research projects, and we have been revised and resubmit a few of the research projects. Probably like 50% of you guys have been approved, by us. But each individuals have been have to be resubmit, your research projects, your research ethic applications. And we have, like I mentioned, that we have been approving like 50% of the projects. So I would like to invite some of you guys who have been, approved by the research project to reflect on what you have learned, so far. And after that, I will go through like the 3 key important points that's in the research process that we should reflect on. But first of all, like some of you who have been approved by the research, the ethic research application have been approved. Maybe Dr. Lam Noi can share with us, please. Dr. Lam Noi, I think you are.
I'm here.
Yes,
could
thank
you
you.
repeat the question that I said about the previous experience about what?
I would like you to reflect on your ethic research process. Yes, Because I think yesterday your research process had been approved, by the SUMERNET secretariat, and you had been working with Dr. Rioni on this, course. So what have you learned so far from the ethic review process?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say that I learned a lot during the time of working about the research ethics with Dr. Leona. The first, it make me more clear about the stakeholder. The first is the boundary partner. We have to identify the specific boundary partner in our research area. In our research, we mentioned the specific boundary partner is a water decision maker, local authority, specific local authority, and also the vulnerable and marginal right group in our project. In the addition, we make very clear definition of V&M group, and also we confirm about the we will interview who and whom. We also confirm about that the question A will be delivered to whom and what is read. We also confirm about the how to calculate the sample size. It means that how to calculate the number of questions A will be delivered to the V&M group, and how to calculate the number of decision makers we will interview. In addition, we also make that when we conduct the research that it might be the risk will be happen, and how can reduce the risk, how can reduce the research conflict in our research. In addition, Dr. Leona also asked us to make sure that the tool we will use for the data analysis, and also we have laid down on the specific method for data collection, data analysis. All the questions from Leona make me like the very headache about the explain, and after explain, we think that we after explain to Leona to understand, we think that okay, we make our team much more clear about what we want to do, what we want to collect, and what we want to analyze to seek the finding of our research. So I think I have been working with many international projects, but this is the first time I have to complete the ethic form before go to the field. Normally, during the time I conducting international project in Vietnam and with other donors, after they approve the proposal, they need the data collection immediately, and the working process is different with SEI. However, SEI asked us to complete the ethic form, so I think it is a very good chance to us for improving our understanding about data collection and our understanding about the research approach for all the whole project, and also it is a chance for all the team members of our project to share experience each other and working together to finalize the ethic form. This is for my sharing.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for highlight the importance of data collections and the research process. We would like to highlight this because I think eventually you guys, like most of the project, have to publish in the international research paper, and I think the ethic process or like ethical approval is really important. That's why we would like to help you on that, because when you want to, like I mentioned, that when you want to publish in the international research like a journal, you need to have the approval of research project, and we highlight in particular the data and collections, because this is very important for you when you want to write the international research paper to publish in international research journal. Your paper have to have like a consistency in data and the research method, and be ethical and credible. So beside Dr. Lam Nói, who would like to share the experience on the ethic review process? I think that Dr. Ong Tan U from AA Adapt has been his research project also have been approved by SUMERNET Secretariat. So, Dr. Ong Kan U, would you like to share your experience, please? Ong Tun O.
Hello, good morning,
Yes.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with my previous colleague. We have learned a lot, but I would like to highlight one of the most important lesson learned that from the integrated review process is like integrated balance. So in our research project, we have a two type of data collection. The first one is the participatory rapid appraisal. It's a participatory discussion with the different stakeholders. So we have also have the face-to-face the primary topic data collection. So it's this process we have to meet with the difference. In any first method the focus group discussion, we have a different stakeholder, and also which include the people from different level, like from official and also the director and DG. So different levels. So we had to be pay attention to the involvement of the every stakeholder in our discussion group. This is the one process that we were highlighted. The second one is like we will conduct the face-to-face interview. So in this there we need we have to make a selection process. So in our research proposal, we are targeted like 30%, 30 to 50% should be women. So we had to make a random sampling or something like that. So we had to train our numerator how to do it, integrate balancing. And also we have to train our enumerator as well, like how to respect the community, because they had to meet with their not only the bodily but also the verbally. So they had to speak very smoothly. And also what I would like to mention is the language, because our research where we conducted in two ethnic populated areas. So indeed two different regions. So we had to respect their language. For example, like we will be dealing with the participant who speak different language. So we had to respect the language as well. So we are also thinking of to train, numerator from the different in this ethnic group, so that they can speak directly on their own language. So this is also the one that we discussed, and also we also develop a template, etiquette template. So before we conduct the interview, so our interviewer have to be signed, our etiquette consent form. So in the etiquette consent form, we also acknowledge, what about our what is our projects, what are our project objective, and also what we would like to get from you, from the interviewer, and also we also confess that the outcome of the research where we use it like where we use in the public, but we will acknowledge the participation or involvement of the participant in our research project. So this is our etiquette consent form. So we will let our interviewee reach our etiquette consent form. That if they only agree, they will sign, and so that we can conduct the research. So this is the process that we learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable experience. Who else would like to share your experience on ethical review process? Any project has been approved and would like to share with your friends? Okay. Yes. So, like I mentioned, that maybe I think Mr. Michael have to go back to like his presentations, and then after that I will reflect on the ethical process later. For this part, I just would like to ask participants to share your experience on the research process. But I think that Mr. Michael have to present first until before I reflect on the ethic review process later. So, Mr. Michael, your turn, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. It's very important to get some of those reflections, and in the experiences that were shared, it's already clear the diversity of issues that are coming up for projects around, for example, representation of different genders and groups, how to deal with language challenges as well. I think it's an important consideration within countries and across the teams as well. So there was a comment in the chat as well about that tells me that there are those projects which have not yet engaged in the ethics process. Perhaps some of the COVID water grantees and some other teams are yet to fully engage with the process. So it might be useful if I give a quick run through of what the process looks like, at least on paper. And then, of course, as we've heard, we've already had 18 teams go through that ethics review process, and this has been a good learning opportunity for us as well, and improvements that we need to make to that process in the future. So this is the snapshot of how the process works, and I'll go into detail of each of the steps. In general, though, it's up to the project leader with support from the team to complete the ethics review form, ideally having read and discussed some of the ethics material that's available through SUMERNET to enable you to complete the form in the most sort of comprehensive and correct way. And the way that we are processing your ethics reviews is to group projects into one of 3 categories, which then determines how it's reviewed within the Secretariat. And then, as we've heard already, in most cases, there will be feedback going back to the teams based on the form you submitted, suggestions for where to revise, where to add information, and then hopefully we want that to lead to an ethics approval before you start collecting data. So as I mentioned, there are three categories of projects within SUMERNET. The first being a co-design project. Now this is when local participants, communities, organizations are directly part of the process, designing the research questions, really not just being passive participants in research, but actually active collaborators in designing research processes. There are a number of expectations from SUMERNET for these types of projects. First of all, we want to make sure that the relevance of the research is clearly identified. Not just the relevance, but also how the process will be co-managed with local groups, and what the benefits of the project will be to those partners. There should be very clear opportunity for active engagement with local groups, perhaps some skills transfer, capacity building as well, from the researchers to the partners. And we really expect that the research is conducted to very high ethical standards, and that's where the importance of the review comes in. Category 2 would be perhaps the more traditional research projects where primary data is being collected. There is a field component to the research, but maybe the collaboration remains within the research teams, maybe with policy partners or other stakeholders, but not directly with the research informants or the participants. You know, we have very similar expectations here besides the level of collaboration, I think. There should still be opportunities, and it should still be explored how to engage local community leaders, different marginalized or different social groups, whether it be around ethnicity, race, gender, and so on. And there should be a clear process for how the knowledge is generated, how results are shared across the team and also with participants. And then third category would be secondary data collection projects, basically projects that don't have a field component. I don't think there are many of these within SUMERNET, but these would be related to projects that are only desk-based or perhaps conducting lab experiments. But it's important to note that even with these types of activities, it's important that ethics standards and principles are followed and upheld, even if the engagement with people, with vulnerable groups, marginalized groups is less. So as I mentioned, the project leader has the responsibility for completing and submitting the ethics form. The Secretariat, on behalf of the steering committee, through Ajahn Jan and Dr. Leone, will be the ones primarily reviewing and giving feedback to the teams, and giving suggestions for where it can be improved and areas that they would like to see enhanced within your research project. This is very closely tied with, for example, how conflict sensitivity is dealt with in the project, gender and social equity. So we're hoping that all of these different aspects and issues within the project are addressed collectively, because it's quite difficult, in fact, to separate ethics from those other processes. It's important to note, and it was actually mentioned by Lam Noi, that the SUMERNET process is, in fact, just one ethics process that exists. It may be that your university, your research institution, or in fact your National Ethics Review Board has a separate process. And we want to be conscious and aware of those. So if your project or if your research is passing through an external process from your university or your institution, you need to let us know, and we adapt the SUMERNET process to complement any external ethics review processes. So the form is available at a link. I believe it's shared with all the teams upon sort of granting and part of the inception process of the project. This is the first time we've used the form, and there may be changes to come. So we welcome your feedback on how you've been able to complete the form, if it's been easy to understand, if there are key questions that really aren't relevant in your eyes or aren't clearly understood. Please let us know, because we want to improve the process and make it as sufficient and effective as possible. So that's a quick overview of how the process works for those that haven't engaged so far. Perhaps this is a good chance to hear from those that have not yet engaged in the process. Dr. Bui Dok Tin, you commented that this is very useful. Do you have any questions related to how the process works? Bui Dok Tin, do you have anything you'd like to share at this point? Any questions?
Yes, could you hear me?
Please, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, indeed, I found that the training is very useful for us. Indeed, like we used to do one ethic review for our project in SUMERNET phase 3 with the LMPPI in LMPPI institutes. But at this way, in SUMERNET phase 3, we just finished our questionnaires and also the list of questions for focus group discussion. And then we submit all the questionnaire and the list of the questions to the donor in, I think, in Harvard University, in LMPPI, and then they approve the questionnaire, and they say, okay, that's ready for surveys. But for this training, we found that at least we have 6, we should have 6 kind of like knowledge in ethics review, like integrity, respect, responsibility, competence, social equity, and balance So I think I learned some in terms of kind of like social equity or ethic balance. I think that we need to consider in our research project. But for this stage, our VCA project, we are about completion the questionnaire because we have quite long in terms of questionnaire development. So that's why a little bit delay in terms of ethic application. So I think at this point, about next week, I think we will apply for ethic reviews from SUMERNET phase 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's really useful to hear your experiences with other ethics review processes, and I failed to mention that in fact donors themselves will sometimes have their own requirement, and I think you'll see when you come to complete the SUMERNET process that it's a lot more detailed and a lot broader than just, for example, reviewing questionnaire materials or developing consent forms and so on. There's a lot of information there that we feel is important to the ethics process beyond just the ways in which data are collected. So yeah, please don't hesitate to ask questions when you start your SUMERNET process.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
I'd like to hand back over to Ajahn Jan to share some more reflections and hear from other participants. So please, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. Can you go to my slide, please?
And it should be on the screen now.
Oh, no, not yet. Just a moment. Okay.
Can you see it? Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, there's like Dr. Leonie and I has been reviewing around 80% of our SUMERNET research ethic applications, and those projects have been go through like resubmit and resubmit and reworking, with like individual, and like some of them have to work with Dr. Leonie, some of them have to work with me, some of them have to work with Mr. Carmen. This is for us to claiming. This is for us as a team to learning and build capacity for us to understand about the research ethic review process and how we can take action on the research ethic, and also how can we do no harm to the research participants. And from we reviewing like I said, the 80%, I found the 3 common pitfalls or the mistake that like the participants generally make, and that is not because we don't understand, like we are the first time that we reviewing this kind of a lot of you is the first time that you have done, this ethical review. So sometimes you did not understand what we are looking for in the ethical review. So the first one is you need to describe each element of SUMERNET ethical application from supporting document consistently. What does this mean? This means that you need to understand each element, what are we looking for? And then like you have to answer it consistently. Let's say, for example, in the question number 5, we ask about who are your participants, and many projects say that it's farmer, local authority, leader, women. But question number 17, you put indicate your participant target group. You put children on it. So the two answer is not consistent to each other, And then another thing is when you use children as your participant, you also need the guidance informed consent also. So that can make your research project more consistent with, I'm sorry, today I just take medicine, so yeah. So another pitfall is explain research methodology and data collections. You need to recruit and select participants. Like your recruitment and your selection of participants you need to explain that, like your stamping method. What is your stamping method? Are you use randomized quota or certified target? You know, in your like a population and sampling, you need to explain that. You know, and a lot of the researcher did not explain this clearly. So this is what we're looking for in the research ethic review process. Also method 2, you know, you need to provide us with the research method 2. Like if you do qualitative research, you need to give us the survey. Quantitative research, you need to give us the survey, and qualitative, you need to provide us the focus group and interview guideline, you know, because we can look at it better. All those like question will do harm to the participant or not. And also the informed consent, like Dr. Ong Ton from Myanmar said that he had to give the informed consent to the participants, you know, before he conduct the research. And you also need to like give us those informed consent forms so we know. And the informed consent form is about like volunteer. The participant have to be the volunteer basic, and you have to indicate that they have the right to withdraw, and you have to indicate that the risks and benefits of the research, and also how you manage data and confidential sensitive information. You know, like you have to show that like your data, you have to clarify that your data is autonomous or identify or de-identifies, you know, in the application form. This is to protect the research participants. And also you have to clarify potential risk and benefit of the research activity in the research application. And also this is to show that like you understand the SUMERNET research ethic application, and you be able to apply it, you know. So you have to reflect on this, you know, like SUMERNET ethic application, and you have to like kind of like a synthesis and put them into those, you know, like application form, and eventually act, you know, up on that. And the SUMERNET ethic application consists of 6, you know, like principle. 1 is integrity, 2nd is respect, the 3rd is responsibility, the 4th is competency, and social equity and ethical balance. So these are like a common, you know, like thing that we need to, you know, ensure that we kind of like emphasize on at the research ethic applications. Yeah, I'm sorry today. I just take the medicine because I was have a cold, so I cannot really speak very well today. I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you very much, Jan. I mean, it was very clear from my point of view. So sorry to hear you're not well, but thank you very much. Really important insights that you shared. I thought perhaps it might be useful to look a bit more closely at the form and see if participants have specific questions. So I'm going to share my screen to show the form. Just to give a quick run through of how it looks, and hopefully everyone can. Can I just check that you can see my screen in the room? Great. So some of you, of course, have already very familiar with this form, but I just wanted to run through it quickly again to show you how it looks. There may be a question in the chat. Anjali? I can't read the. Yeah. Anjali, would you like to share your question with us?
Hello. Hello, all the researcher teams and all the secretariat. Actually, we have learned in the our previous training about the incentives that we sometimes provide to our participants or interviewees when we conduct the interviews. And actually last time we were learning that some of the team be able to give some incentives, but in that sense, it's just only a small gift or token or just something like very small to those people that we work or have collected information from. So we would like to really again hear from you in terms of the ethics wheels and the process. If all the research team can have the proper advice on how to deal with this process, does it need to be a money or any advice and in very details, because it can be a very good practice for all the team members to work on ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anjali, for the question. That's something we haven't discussed so far. The idea of how we compensate the research participants for their time and for their engagement in the process. And some teams may be giving small gifts or small tokens. Some may be offering cash payments. I can give you my opinion on that, but and then maybe Ajahn Jan can share her recommendation on this. Personally, I think it's quite context specific. What's appropriate in different settings or in different cultures. I can't imagine that SUMERNET has a clear recommendation or guideline on, for example, what to give, how much to give, if at all. I think it's appropriate in some cases and maybe inappropriate in other cases. So that's not a very clear, specific answer, but I think it's up to the teams to discuss and assess what's appropriate. Ajahn Jan, could you also share what you feel on this?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Michael on the context. It depends on the context and how your adjustment, and it has to be fair too. Like I think one of the SUMERNET research group, they mentioned that they work in like a multicultural setting, and they said that they're gonna give like a biscuits because it's appropriate for certain culture. But like when we review, we told them that like, what about another culture also? Even though the biscuits, if you say that the biscuit appropriate for one culture, but what about another? So this kind of thing you need to take into account, even though it's a small thing, it's not incentive, but you still need to make sure that it's fair, it appropriates to every group. And then another thing is, I think that a lot of people ignore this, including like the research project in my university. Like a lot of time you give is to like people who have power. You give more to people who have power. You generally neglect the farmer or people who doesn't have voice. So this is very important that you are being fair with every group. I think that is the most. This is from my experience, So I think this is like, yeah, being fair and context considerations, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I fully agree. And I think however you deal with this in your projects, it's also important that you describe what steps you took in your research methodology, and also in reflecting on any limitations or any issues within the process. For example, you may find that the idea of offering incentives influences who chooses to participate in the research. It's in my experience, I've conducted research where you go to a community or you go to a locality, and some people maybe are not very keen or maybe a bit reluctant to join a focus group, for example. But then if you're offering certain incentives, suddenly more people may show up, and suddenly more people may in fact sort of displace the people that you wanted to participate in the focus group, who maybe were a bit quiet or a bit shy and reluctant. and now suddenly your focus group is made up of people that you didn't necessarily intend or expect to join because of the incentives or because of the offerings that the research teams were given. So be very conscious and be very aware of how it affects who engages and also the power dynamics, as Ajahn Jan said. Write it up, share your reflections in your outputs, because it's a very important part of the methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or reflections from our participants? The floor is really open, so either unmute yourself and talk or put your hand up, please.
I think last time during the conflict sensitivity, Dr. Pishamon was asking about the ethical balance, between like, Dr. Pishamon, would you like to share your thoughts on this, your experience on the ethical balance? You were talking about the suspicious in the ethic principle or something like that. Dr. Pishamon, are you still there? Would you like to share this point?
Hello, hi. Sorry, I have my student with me as well, so that she can better understand the ethics process. Well, thank you again for both of your presentations and interventions. The question that I had asked last time was when we're kind of dealing with interviewees, especially if they come from the corporate sector or from the government sector, and if there's an element of a conflict of interest, when we're speaking with them or when we're interacting with them, how should we address those conflicts of interest, and to ensure that our research process, the way we document the findings and how we report the findings, remain as objective as possible?
So what is your experience? What have you done, like in the past? Your experience, what did you do?
So there were instances, and this recently happened as well in a research project that we were both involved in, where the interviewees came from a variety of sectors, including from corporate. And so, as you might imagine, there were conflicting narratives when it came to understanding what was happening, but also what the problems were. In order to build trust and in order to gain access to these individuals, we of course had to we took into consideration what everyone had to say, but then there were very clear differences in what was being said between the companies, the government, and the NGOs. And so as a result, I guess when you go into a research environment, you don't want to go in with a lot of subjectivity or a lot of bias. And you really want to approach each interviewees with respect, and also to build trust with them. But I wonder, or we were wondering, to what extent can we actually balance that with the requirement that we also cross-check, verify, and potentially, if it's in the case where we're doing applied research, also challenge some of these stakeholders on the things that they say. So how do we take into account those different tensions or those potential conflicts of interest in how we design our project, but also in our ethics application, for instance?
Yeah, thank you.
That makes sense.
Yes, makes sense. I think you start with the very right approach that you try to like build trust among the stakeholder, But I think in the real world, I mentioned during the conflict sensitivity training, there are no like a win-win solution. So sometimes you need a compromise, and sometimes you say that you monitor their behavior closely. So you can try to do that, for your own cautions. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's your approach has been very good. That's like building trust, and kind of like monitoring what they have done, and sometimes, if you cannot find the win-win solution, right? Mention that you need to compromise, and yeah, that was my suggestions. And also like consider like your organizational culture, what they want you to like behave or something like X, like your principle, always take consideration of the SUMERNET ethics principle also. Like everybody have their own agenda, like I mentioned, or like interest or value. So like we cannot change those, you know. So like what we can do is we protect ourselves and our research participants, you know, and try our best, you know, to do no harm to no one and try to make like a positive impact to our research, you know. Yeah, that's my suggestion.
Thank you very much, John, for that. May I actually ask a quick follow-up question to what you said, which is, I understand, of course, that we are doing a research project as opposed to an advocacy project or things like that. But how would you, like, if you come across a scenario where an interviewee has disclosed something to you that may have, you know, wider ramifications beyond the research project that you're doing. And so there's this kind of tension in reporting things in a way that protects everyone, but then reporting it in a way that kind of blows the whistle, or, you know, is a bit of a whistleblowing exercise where you explain what's happening and why, like the role that this particular individual might have in exacerbating a situation, for instance. Like, is there, how would you suggest kind of navigating those moral or ethical dilemmas between kind of doing what may well be right in a social justice, from a social justice perspective, and blowing the whistle and saying how things are straight up, and kind of maintaining that research integrity and protecting your interviewees and what they've said?
Yes, yeah, it depends on the how impact it blowing the whistle, you know, and how can you communicate with them also. Or if you cannot communicate with these people, frankly, who are your like a connector? Who are those people who can talk to the people who blow the whistle? Maybe it could be your boundary partner or your outer team member that can go and talk to them. That is called the connector. You know, you can ask them to go or ask them why do they do those kind of behavior. You know what I mean? So yeah. My point is I don't know like the context very well to, you know, and how impact is the blowing the whistle or something like that. But yeah, so like if you feel that like blowing the whistle is impact your research project, you might, if you can talk to them, you can, you know, you can. If you found that like if you talk to them and it's gonna cause more problems or more conflict, you might consider who is your boundary partner or your team member that can talk to them calmly and they listen. That could be your connector that can help, you know, tie up like a being more peaceful environments, or like more like a, what do you call, more trust, you know, in your research project. Yeah.
Sure.
I hope you answer your questions.
Yes, no, you definitely did. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I think it's very good that SUMERNET have the concept of boundary partner. Our boundary partner can be our connector in this type of situations, you know. Sometimes we have difficulty talking to other people, like a research participant or other group, you know, in the research project. Our boundary partner can help us being a connector in this kind of situation, you know. So use them as an advantage, being peace and being like trustworthiness and credibility in your research. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. That was definitely helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good discussion to be having, and there are no like clear answers, I think, to address some of these issues. For me, you raise an important challenge within some of the projects, which is that, first of all, we want research integrity and we want to report data in a fair way. So if you hear one thing from one stakeholder and one thing from another stakeholder, then I think that first of all you want to reflect both perspectives in your results, and then through your analysis make some kind of judgment or determination as to which statements may hold more value or more truth. But at the same time, projects are also trying to build relationships with policymakers, companies, different stakeholders. It's not just about producing research and then making sure it's accurate and then you're done. It's about the other side of the engagement as well. So one recommendation I would have is, when you are sitting down for interviews or focus groups or whatever the data collection might be, make your intentions and objectives clear and state them at the beginning. If your intention is to reveal inequity in how water resources are allocated, it's clear to the informants that that's your research objectives, that's your research aim, and the insights that they share will be framed around that issue. If you're not clear, or if there's any risk of deception as to what your intentions of the research are, then that's maybe where you fall into difficulty with the stakeholders, because they might say, well, you told me the research was about this, but now you're reporting these insights, or now you're sharing this. And on the whistleblowing issue as well, for example, SCI, the Secretariat has a whistleblowing mechanism. It's for our partners to use if they come, SUMERNET partners as well as all of SCI's partners to formally report and raise issues that would fall under whistleblowing, whether it's fraud, malpractice, and so on. So there are independent mechanisms within the network as well that can hopefully help you negotiate through that difficult process. Yeah, thanks for raising those points. And Leonie also commented in the chat that it's not the researchers can be completely devoid of any bias or values. We all come with our own worldviews as well, right? And positionality is an important concept within research, and I think formally acknowledging them and explicitly writing about those in your methods is important as well. Thank you. Time has moved very quickly, and we have just about 5 minutes left. Are there any more questions or comments? We have time for one or two more. So please don't be shy.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hi, yes.
Yes, may I say something?
Please go
I have
ahead.
a short comment on what you just stated. I just had a comments on the token or remuneration that we give to the respondents when we collect the data, like for example, like focus group discussions or interviews with the key informants. As far as I know, when I conducted the research, conducted fieldwork in Laos, it's not required for the interviewer or the researchers to pay, money to the key informants. It's for free, just gonna go, and we finish the interview. That's fine. But that matters in the Vietnamese main computer, where you have to. It's not like the written form. It's not a, like a formal requirements, but that's something you have to pay for the participants when engaged in the focus group discussions or interviews. But how much you pay, or how much money you pay to the participants, that matters in some cases. And it kind of very sensitive matter to some extent. And how much money you pay to the government officials, or local communities or farmers. And in this case, because so many projects undertaken in certain village or a certain commune, for example, and they come from different resources. For example, like the very big grants, they had a very big grant. They're very generous in giving money to farmers or of government officials. But others, they have a little money. They don't have much money, so they can the weighted or the amount of money they pay to the respondents kind of different from the others. So in this case, we try to compromise, to make sure we agree on a certain amount of money that we pay to certain kind of participants, to make sure they are not okay, for example, for this particular project, say, okay, hey, they pay me like $3 per meeting, but for you just pay $1 or $2. So I think to some extent this will likely impact the quality of the data we collect, for example. So if they're happy with the remuneration, they say more and provides more kind of information that you need. Otherwise, it will be tough. I guess it's just to share some of my comments on things that I've experienced so far. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And I think in determining your approach to remuneration, you could either have an equity approach or an equality approach, because you could pay every participant the same or remunerate the same token to everyone, but depending on their job, their position, their livelihood, it's going to mean very different to them. So perhaps an equitable approach to that might be more appropriate, you know, finding out what's appropriate. If you've taken an hour of a farmer's time, what does that represent versus an hour of a policymaker's time? Dr. Pichamon, your hand is up. Did you have another comment to make, please?
Oh, sorry, thank you. It also goes into the question of remuneration, but the issue that Leonie had raised, which I absolutely agree with. I was wondering whether you could please reflect on what kind of methods of self-reflexivity one could apply to a research project that you often find yourself using. And I understand that different projects have different objectives and may require very different methods and approaches, but it'll be great to get some ideas about how one might implement kind of that appreciation of positionality, but also to ensure self-reflexivity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. I think that's a good challenge actually to us as part of the research design process. It's part of ethics, but it's also part of how we conduct research. So methods for reflexivity. I don't have any immediate ones right now. I wonder if Ajahn Jan has any specific suggestions on that, and if not, I'm gonna ask Leonie to comment, but first Ajahn Jan.
Well, I'm not expert on this, you know, like qualitative research method. Maybe Dr. Leonie can, you know, like share her expertise on this. Thank you.
So I might just add a little bit. I guess I use different approaches depending on where I am, but I always try and be reflective of the situation. In some more quantitative approaches, I actually use, once the data is collected, I use different sort of sensitivity analysis to determine how sensitive different results are to alternate sorts of framings. We have an equal, we have an equity approach, we have a power approach. All of these could reflect or should reflect how you've actually set up the research question. So I also from the beginning use a research design, and then I actually try to use colleagues or friends, trusted friends, to test that design against what they think could be some of the key issues. So right from the beginning, I'm seeing about where does my value set sit within the literature? How is that making me choose a path that isn't, you know, it's not inclusive of everyone, and I understand that, but what am I missing out on from the beginning? And then, of course, when we write up our research results, we write that journal article, and that's a great place where at the end you can say this research did not deal with these issues. And that's just part of the, from the beginning to the end, how do you make sure that your values are consistent, or at least you're reflective of the whole process? Does that help a little?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Leonie. Well, it's 11:30 here in Bangkok, so that brings us very much to the end of the session, but not the end of the conversation about ethics in SUMERNET. You know us all now. You have our contact details. At whatever stage you are at in the ethics process, please get in touch with us, whether you've already done the review and you want more guidance, or if you're about to start the ethics review process. It's an iterative process. It's not a tick box process. It's not a yes or no. It's not a approved, disapproved. It's a dialogue between the teams and with the advisors as well. So with that, I'd like to thank Ajahn Jan. I'd like to thank all the participants for a very active engagement over the past hour and a half, and I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Just at the end here, I'd like to jump back on and say a big thank you to everyone online, whether you posted a question, did a like, turned on your camera or asked or answered a question. The learning is really about the sharing of experiences and also, you know, the fact that you get to answer your questions. So a big thank you to everyone, particularly, of course, to our presenters, Mr. Michael and Dr. Sudarat. Appreciate both of your time and effort. They are both available if you need further queries or questions. Now, SUMERNET has information up and available. The ethics principles are up there. There's a YouTube channel, fascinating watching, all about ethics, which I know that you're all going to jump into and do now, but just hold on to that and come back to when you need it. At this point, I'd like to say that there's a survey also on this training session, so we can learn about how we can do this better. So there's a link now in the chat box. Please jump on and what worked, what didn't, and any suggestions you have for improving the sorts of training that we can provide to you into the future. At this point, this almost signals the last of our SUMERNET training for these sessions that's really focused on the fundamentals, you know, the conflict. What is conflict? Human rights, ethics, and as such, our future training will be targeted and directed in a different direction, but we want to make sure that we learn from our past experiences. So a big thanks to our presenters. There's a whole team of people sitting in the room with me that are helping, Gus, Unchali and Nguyen, which make sure that we're as smooth as possible, even if we're not perfect. Let's just say that we have a day job that's not running web conferences and webinars. So a big thanks to everyone. Please fill out the survey. Enjoy, and we'll see more of you into the future. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.